Okay, I'd be happy to. Thank you. So if you could just answer present, that'd be appreciated. Levon Barnes, Chair.
Present.
Shanika Bynum.
Present.
Leah Eford.
Present.
Monique Hosley Hyman.
Present. Happy New Year.
Donald Hughes.
Present.
Seth Kendall.
Present.
Michelle Ketchum. She's still on maternity leave, I believe.
I think Michelle's resigned.
Okay, Michelle resigned.
Yes, she did.
Okay, I'm sorry, my apologies. Brian Langlois.
Here.
Carl Newman.
Present.
Jillian Riley, but she has since resigned. Adam Seda.
Yes, present.
Yours truly, and Ebony West.
Ebony is here. She stepped away for a minute. I believe she's here though.
Okay, Ebony is here. And then our, of course, support staff, we have Mr. Johnson.
I'm here. I hope everybody's doing well.
Matthew Snars.
Good evening, everyone.
Then our city council liaison, is it Leonardo Williams?
I'm present.
Thank you. And then Terry Porter Holmes.
She's not going to be here tonight.
Did I miss anyone? Okay, with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all that you do. And I hope that everybody has received a copy of the minutes as well. But before we get to the minutes, I would like to welcome our newest city council liaison, Leonardo Williams, who will be our direct city council contact, elected official contact on this committee. So I'm going to give 5 minutes of the committee's time to Brother Leonardo Williams, and I would like to say welcome, and we look forward to your input. And hopefully, this is a rambunctious board, so we do a lot of fighting in here. So I just want to let you know that. Be prepared and bring your boxing glove. That's all.
Well, it's great to be here. And Brother Barnes, I do not need 5 minutes. It's my first meeting, so therefore I need to listen more than speak. But I will say that, I'm excited to be here and to serve as the council liaison, simply because I'm collecting I
think you're breaking up
together. And I believe since we're experiencing these things together, we can solve them together. So I'm looking forward to all of the tools and resources we have at our disposal to just bring forth a better quality of life for residents in Durham. Let me continue listening while I'm driving, and I just look forward to being engaged and taking on what I need to take to the council from this group.
Thank you. We appreciate you, Councilmember Williams, and look forward to working with you from here on out. At this time, I would like to take a motion to approve
I should say Chair Barnes. Yeah. I'm sorry. I naturally say Brother Barnes.
Listen, we brothers. If those who are listening, we are a part of the greatest fraternity, Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated, as well as Brother Johnson over there. We never leave Brother Johnson out. However, I will take a motion from a committee member to approve not only November 2021's minutes, but also October 2021's minutes at this time.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I failed to send out the October minutes, but I only sent out the November minutes. So could we just delay October until next month and just only vote on these? The last meeting, which was November 21st.
Sure. Nothing happened in October anyway. I'm just playing. Yeah, so we can move October's approval to the February meeting. So at this time, then I'll take a motion for November 2021's minutes to be approved.
So moved.
All right, can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Been moved and properly second. Was there any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, we shall take a vote by aye. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? I don't hear anything. So that is approved. November 2021's minutes have been approved. All right, we're gonna move down the agenda. So I will now turn it over to Mr. Schnars, who's gonna be talking about performance matrix and priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, everyone. Matt Schnars, the Community Development Department Planning and Performance Manager. So I'm gonna just go over a brief slideshow, and then we'll open up for any discussion or questions about the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. So just to reground members who have been here since the beginning of the fiscal year, back in maybe the August or September meeting, there were several topics of interest that the committee had identified, one of those being performance metric priorities. And so we're just going to go through a brief slideshow on the 2020 and 2021 CAPER. And let me and Mr. Chair, can you see my screen?
You're good to go.
Okay. I'm a little rusty since we haven't had a meeting, so I'm a little rusty on Zoom, so forgive me. So just the agenda is just a few slides here. We'll just give an overview of the CAPER.
Matt, we're seeing the agenda. Were you talking about the agenda? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through the slides here. The agenda overview of the CAPER, and then give some brief summary slides, and then open for questions and answers, or questions, and we can answer questions. So what is the CAPER? CAPER stands for Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report.
Matt, before you get started, we're still seeing the agenda for the meeting and not the
Okay,
slide.
I'm sorry. Sorry, you meant, I had agenda on the screen. Let me reshare.
That's what I meant. So
Sorry about that. How about now?
We good to go now.
Let me back up then. So once again, just to reground us, it's the CAC requested topic performance metrics priorities is one of the agenda items that the committee had identified as something of interest back in the fall. So the agenda, we'll just go through the overview of the CAPER, just a couple of summary slides from the full report. The full report, Madam Secretary did share the full report in with the agenda email, so that's something that you can reference. That's got much more detail, and then we'll just have some Q&A at the end. So, what is the CAPER? It stands for Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, and we just abbreviate that as CAPER. And this is a required annual report for U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is HUD, Community Planning and Development Program, CPD. So HUD has many different divisions, and I believe a lot of members are familiar with or have heard about the Housing Authority. They also are largely driven by HUD, but it's a different division of HUD. It's the Public Housing Agency, Public Housing Division. So this is also part of HUD, and we align with the Housing Authority, but these programs that are under the CAPER are under a different division. And so what programs and funding are reported? So there's 4 core programs that are part of the CPD, Community Planning and Development. And first one is Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. The next one is the Home Investment Partnership, which is HOME. And then there's the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, HOPWA, and Emergency Solutions Grant, which is ESG. And so these 4 programs are the ones that the City of Durham Department of Community Development administers, receives these funds from HUD. The CDBG and HOME are primarily dedicated towards development of housing or rehabilitation of housing. Not completely, but those are kind of the core functions of those 2 sources. Housing Opportunities of Persons with AIDS is for people that have HIV/AIDS, and ESG is dedicated for people who are experiencing homelessness. And so who completes the CAPER? So city and county entitlement jurisdictions that receive this HUD funding, we all over the country receive this funding, and it's based on a formula that HUD uses to determine how much each community gets. And for each of the programs, it's a little bit different of how they make that determination, but population drives a big piece of it in all the programs, population of the local jurisdiction. So larger jurisdiction typically get a larger amount of funding, but that's not the only factor that HUD uses to determine the amounts of funding. And then states also receive the funding, and they receive an allotment that's also based on a formula. And the state administers their programs and does their reporting for the CAPER that primarily dedicated for the smaller counties, smaller communities who are not large enough to receive the entitlement funding themselves. So both jurisdictions have to complete these reports, these CAPER reports each year. And they vary a little bit between state and the local county and city jurisdictions. Oh, wrong direction. So just a high level summary. Once again, the full report is in your packet. And so there's much more detail in there that, I encourage you to reference if you want to dig deeper into it. It's a pretty large report with a lot of detail. Some of it is really kind of subject matter expert sort of dedicated and uses some language that maybe is not super familiar for those that don't work in the arena, but it is something to reference. So the source of funds for the 2020-2021 CAPER, CDBG, we had $2,144,310, and then expended $2,302,532. And so that, first of all, is going to probably confuse folks because that's more money than we received. The CAPER is it works on how much money you expended, and with some of the funding sources, there are overlaps in the funds. So there may be some years where more funding is expended than what we received in that year. So the middle column is just what we received in the 2020 federal fiscal year. And then the home amount, the annual allocation from that year was $1,265,206, and of that we spent $116,494. And HOPWA, $483,344, and of that we spent $337,398. And then ESG, the annual allocation for that year was $174,691, and we spent $231,620. And then just once again, high level goals and outcomes. So each year we do something called an annual action plan, and we have to have a target for each year And that target for the year is driven by the 5-year consolidated plan. So this is just a snapshot of a larger table that's in in the full report that just gives you sort of a sense of sort of the goals and outcomes. So rental units constructed, and then the unit of measure is housing or household housing unit, and goal being 32 and actual was 0. Rental units rehabilitated, housing units expected was 8 and actual was 30, so exceeded the goal on that. And direct financial assistance to home buyers, this is something that is a new program that we're just launching this year. So we don't have any progress towards that yet, but the target, the annual target was 2. Tenant-based rental assistance, rapid rehousing. So this is a combination of both the HOPA program and the ESG program. Target 15, target or expected was 15 and actual was 16. And other is, there's a, once again, larger table, and I just combined the other categories into that there, that one line there, 69, and the actual was 36. And then tenant-based rental assistance, rapid rehousing, households assisted 75, and actual for the program here is 85. And once again, this is combining what was a really large table. I had to figure out how to kind of put it in here in a way that maybe would make sense. And then homeless person overnight shelter target 300 and, or yeah, expected program year was 300 and actual was 441. So that's primarily our emergency shelters that we support with this funding. And once again, just to reiterate that we do have the full report for this current year that we're referencing is the 2020 Durham CAPER. And then we also have the archive reports from previous years that you're welcome to reference. These are all on our website. And actually, if the link wasn't in the agenda, I can make sure that everybody has the link so you can actually find these reports pretty easily. And questions, comments, discussion?
I have a question, Matt. Looking at like the funds received and expended, I know like the home program, there's $1 million unspent. Is that related? I know home is largely for kind of building and restoring low-income housing. Mm-hmm. So those funds not spent just because there's kind of a delay because like housing and construction prices are so high, and so it's not feasible, and we're kind of holding on to those funds, or? Yeah,
and both CDBG and home, once again, they're primarily for development of affordable housing. So home in particular, one program that I know we have a little over $2 million actually in contract right now that's gonna start to expend funds this year. So what happens is, you get a project and it's, in some cases, it's, many millions of dollars, and 1 year of funding is, not always gonna have the traction expend those funds. So there wasn't any of those funds expended. Once again, this is looking at what was expended. So there wasn't any of those expended this year. The amount that was expended was for administration. And so that's, I guess, one other point that I would make that's not necessarily referenced in any of these slides is that a portion of all these dollars, anywhere from 5%, 7%, I think, for ESG, and then up to 20% for ESG comes to the city of Durham for some of the administration of these funds. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Dr. Langloss.
Kind of. So just to kind of clarify, so like the funds that haven't been expended, they're kind of being staged and hopefully combined with other funds for kind of larger costs and stuff.
Yeah, that's
Matt,
probably.
I'll weigh in just to clarify it a little bit. So the answer is yes. So a couple of things, and Matt, correct me, but like for home, for example, you have 3 years to commit, 5 years to expend. for a particular year's funding. So it's designed so that you can work with projects. And so you may not spend all of the money or a portion of the money in the year that you receive it. You might spend it the next year, or you might just commit it. Committed means put in a project. Expend means the money has gone out the door. And so those are tests that we have to, so you can't stockpile the money for a long time. And so what we've been doing, we've been spending some, but we also have some projects that are underway and projects that are committed, where money is under contract, but it's not yet expended because we still have it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's actually the commitment is no longer required. Commitment means, or the commitment timeframe 3 years. They've actually done away with that because HUD understands that it takes communities a long time to expend a lot of these funds, particularly with larger development projects, multi-unit. So what tends to happen is, we use multiple years funding in one or two larger projects, and so you end up combining this year's and the previous year's funding a lot of times into one project. That's not always the case, and it doesn't have to be like that, but that's kind of where we are right now with home.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to continue, I guess, along those same lines. I think the explanation has been helpful in terms of the commitment, the number of years that we have before funding is committed, which Mr. Schnarr, as you said, no longer exists. Does that 5-year requirement to expend the funds still exist? And secondly, I need to look at the full report, but this may be a part of it. I think it would be helpful for us to understand for the sources of funding kind of what that current pot looks like. Like, I understand this is for just the year 2021, but if we have $6 billion because we've held on to funding for the last 3 years or 4 years, I think that would be helpful, as well as what projects are coming down the pike, so that if someone sees this number of 116,000 expended, they don't sort of panic and say, hey, with the need so great in our community, why aren't we getting these dollars out the door? So that's the first part, and I'll let you respond to that. And then I just have a second part that's focused on kind of the goals in terms of units created or built.
Yeah, so that you're correct in what you just described. It is the case that we do have multiple years funding kind of available to be expended, and we do have to expend it. The 5-year expenditure deadline is in place, so the later years funding has to be spent, and then the newer years funding is spent sort of subsequent to that. So there is that 5-year horizon deadline. So the pandemic has played a little bit into some of this in terms of just getting projects moving. Developers and organizations administering these funds have had to negotiate and navigate through sort of different situations with COVID, as you can imagine, but it's still something that we need to work on, we need to address. And
does that mean that, yes, and does that mean that we have contractors or vendors, or I don't know what the appropriate term is, that facilitates the usage of this? So we may put out a RFP for a particular project, or like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, just what you described there. It typically is an annual request for funding, RFP, and organizations apply for the funding, and a lot of times it's not just one single source of funding that they're applying for. And later in the agenda, we do have a few RFPs that are out there right now that we'll talk a little bit more about. But yeah, it is procurement process, competitive bid process that organizations that are interested in doing this work apply for the funding, and then we have an objective scoring criteria that we use to determine which are the most appropriate projects to fund based on the goals that we have for the community.
I appreciate that. And this is my last question. If we could go to the slide that had kind of the goals. Yes, this slide. So how are the program goals determined? Are they set by you all as leadership, or is there some combination of HUD saying, hey, based on population size, based on certain metrics in terms of like housing instability, what goes into being able to set these particular expected program year metrics?
They are very much, the expectation is that the community, and in particular, this committee is involved and should be involved in advising on these.
Hey, Tina.
They're
Are you all on a different Zoom line for the meeting, the chaplain's council?
I'm sorry, I thought I was hearing somebody talk. There's something called the consolidated plan, 5-year consolidated plan. And in that process, it is saying, what do we want to do in the next 5 years with this funding? And we set those 5-year goals, and then each of these individual years are a subset of that 5-year plan. So this 1-year expected goal is what I've got on the screen here. This is part of larger, a larger number for each of these categories. And then when we have the next consolidated planning process and the next 5-year cycle, same thing. It's about a year-long process that we go through that is very much required to consult the all the community, the public stakeholders. It's not something that HUD specifically says what you have to do. There's some categories and some parameters around each of the funding sources of what you can do with the funding, but it's very much then the community's input that drives what these goals are. And then from there, the caper is okay. You said your goals were this for 5 years. In the first year, you're gonna target this portion, next year this portion, next year this portion. So this is a subset. This, what you see on the screen, is a subset of that 5-year plan. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
Absolutely, it does. Thank you so much for that.
yep, thank you.
Matt, and I'm going to add, I think that's a good question, that remember that for everyone, this is the federal funds and the federal funds only. There might be very well be in a particular area, local dollars that are companion dollars. And so when you're looking at a particular program, it has federal and local dollars in it. But this right here, you're only looking at the federal portion.
Kind of a follow-up question that I'm guessing ties back to my first question, but looking at like rental units constructed, expected 32 on this, but 0 been done. I'm assuming that's because, again, like they're being staged and worked on, but they're not counted until they're fully completed, or?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, and just to put a fine point on that, they can't be counted until you have a certificate of occupancy. And then also it's the date of when you receive that certificate of occupancy. I can't remember specifically on this 32 units, but what may have happened is that the units will carry it over into the next year for their completion.
Cool, thank you.
That's right. Yeah, just keep in mind that we're just looking, what's on the screen is just 1 year. And so that, we are very definitive. The date's very exact. It's the city's fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. So, if in the next month or the next 2 months after the end of the year, there may be over 32. In some cases you can see where, the actual is higher than what the target was. So it's sometimes about as clear as mud, but this is the framework that we operate under CPD.
Just a follow up, kind of similar to what Mr. was asking about. When it comes to the organizations, is it usually the same organizations that are getting this money? Clearly 5 years to do a project. you know, but you know that money kind of rolls over and rolls over and rolls over. You know, how are we going about, I guess, making sure that other organizations, if they qualify, the money that they need to be able to fund projects as well? Or is it kind of, you know, this organization's been getting this money and we're going to continue to fund because they haven't finished what they started?
This I would say this comes back to what Mr. Johnson, the point he was making is that we have, I think we have over 100 contracts open right now, but that is not just the federal program. Much of what's funded through the programs that we're talking about here with and the reporting in the CAPER is also joined with the bond funds. So we have many different organizations that do provide services across all the different programs right now. It's in some cases it is the same programs that do receive funding, or in a certain year there might only be one or two programs because it's a large project. JJ Henderson is the one that right now that is the one that has the large amount of home money that's going to take time for them to actually expend that money and develop those units, but that's going to be a kind of a large number of units that will be developed with that funding. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. It's not the same organizations, and I'll be glad to provide the names of the organizations that receive funding right now through this fiscal year, and provide some more detail on that as well.
Yeah, I think that we can lay eyes on can be transparent on which organizations are receiving which dollars and how long they might have been receiving dollars for whatever project that they be working on. I don't know how long they've been working on this particular project, number of years, compared to how much dollars we've allocated to them yearly, as well as estimated of that. Some of those things might be, ongoing, whether.
Mr. Chair, you're going in and out, just to make you aware.
All right, can you hear me now? I'm a little bit better.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you better.
Is that better? Okay.
Yes.
I'm saying for transparency purposes, I think it would bode the seat.
We're losing you, Mr. Chair.
We're losing you, but I think I get the gist of your question, and I'll be glad to respond. So what you're suggesting is that we should be transparent, or more transparent, in terms of what organizations are receiving funding and for how many years. So what I'll say to that is, and Matt and I'll talk about how to present that, but that's what the CAPER is. That's what it shares, what are our goals and who receives funding. What I would say, you have to look at it in two different buckets. One is the development bucket and the other is the services bucket. So let's talk about the services for a minute. The services, particularly ESG and HOPWA and sometimes CDBG, those go to organizations, again, in a competitive process, and they may in fact be for projects or services, more importantly for services, that they expend all of the money in a particular year. And so they're applying for the subsequent year to serve more people or other persons the next year. And so then in terms of development, it will be projects that we assign money in a particular year. And some may, as I shared with the council, when we had the last RFP, some contracts you saw the council approve right away. Some it took over a year for us to draft. But your question is, who are those persons? There are entities. And so it is a range of entities, but I would say in a global picture, we probably don't have as many organizations as we do need, particularly on the development side. If you look at 4% tax credits, and we don't have enough organizations in our region, not just in Durham. And so that's an area for growth for us. And one of the reasons we're trying to do that is put more money in 4% low-income housing tax credit developments, which is hence the RFP that you all received via the email that's on the street now. So I hope
Thank you,
that helps a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Smith, Freshwater.
Just a couple of things. I did want to make note that I did count Rachel Everhart. She logged on, as well as I think Kimberly Davis is an attendee who has also joined the meeting. And there was a question in the chat, and I wanted to make sure Matt knew that Mr. Johnson had answered that question. And the question was around if the funds are interchangeable between programs. And I think the response was, no, the funds are not interchangeable. Each program is its own purpose and regulation. So just wanted to make sure we captured that.
That's correct. Thank you. Thank you. I cannot see the chat, so thank you, Ms. Smith-Freshwater.
Any other questions for Matt?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. This is Terry Porter Holmes. And Matt, I just want to just double check on your slide prior to this one, I believe, and I could have, this one right here, I could have missed it because I was moving to try to get my laptop on. But on where we have the resources made available, C1 amount, did you explain the overage where I see in the third column where it says amount expended during program year?
Yes.
Okay, so you did explain why it would be more than what we were allocated.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Matt.
All right. Come back here.
I think Matt did, just to repeat, he shared here, you would send the link to the caper in its entirety.
Yes, I will.
And so that you have that here. Matt, we can send the 5-year link to the 5-year consolidated plan too.
Yep. Yeah, I'll make sure everybody has that after the meeting as well.
Thank you.
All right, moving forward in the agenda. Matt, you're still on. CAC member RFP scoring and review opportunities.
Yeah, so this leads in, right to some of the questions that were asked. So we have 2 RFP scoring review opportunities right now. One is the multifamily production and preservation project. And just to reground the members and for some of the new members, what we had talked about in the fall was that we would continue to offer opportunities for members of the CAC to serve on these review committees. And so the multifamily production and preservation RFP is on the street right now, so to say. And the review period is from February 2nd through March 4th. And then the homeless coordinated entry with diversion is another RFP that's on the street right now, accepting applications. And the review period for that is February 22nd to March 14th. And so what we offer for the CAC members is that if you're interested in serving as part of the review panel, you can just email me, after the meeting or, over the next day or two, let me know you're interested and I can provide you details of, what that review process is and how you would be involved in that. The actual, once the RFP closes, what we do is that it's done through an electronic system called Zoom Grants. And what we do is we have a scoring rubric for these RFPs that you would have access to, read the proposals and use the scoring rubric through the electronic portal to, review the proposals and then provide your scores and ranking. And then there's a meeting set sometime between those ranges. There'll be a meeting date where we get all of the panel members to meet and just go through the scores and make recommendations on which projects to fund and sort of which priorities. the links in the agenda let you actually read the read the RFPs, read what the applicants see. And once again, I can send those links as well after the meeting. And if there's any questions that folks have about that, or you want more detail, I'd be glad to offer that.
And I would just follow up, Mr. Chair, and just share both of those are extensive, particularly the multifamily, based upon the number of applications and the complexity of them. We probably expect somebody to have to spend about maybe 10 to 12 hours reviewing the applications themselves, and that's in addition to the meeting with the panel. So this is probably the most complex of our request for proposals. This is the multifamily production and preservation. The homeless coordinated entry. Oftentimes, we do have members from the Homeless Services Advisory Committee that serve.
Mr. Johnson, you accidentally muted yourself.
Muted yourself, Mr. Johnson.
I sure did mute myself. Don't ask me how I did that. But I was saying that the Homeless Services, the Advisory Committee usually has a representative on the Homeless Coordinating Entry with Diversion panel. But my point is they do take a time, unlike some of the others that we did, I think last fall or early last year, these can be extensive only because of the complexity of the applications that are being received.
There was a question in the chat about how many, Rachel's question was, how many responses have been received for the multifamily production and preservation?
Don't know the answer to that. Probably at this juncture, none, because it's early in the review process and the deadline is February the 1st. And so most of them are going to come in on the last day, if not all of them.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I had a quick question for you, Mr. Johnson. When folks are looking for folks who can help on those panels, what kind of qualifications or skills do y'all need from us? Or is it more of a y'all trying to get people who are not typically involved in the process involved?
I would say this for multifamily, because these are particularly low-income housing tax credit projects, the purpose of the RFP, we probably need somebody who's familiar with development, familiar with construction and building in this particular RFP, because that's the purpose of the RFP. Homeless coordinated entry. The challenge with homelessness is it does have some, you might need some familiarity with homelessness programs, but probably not as extensive experience as the multifamily in terms of having development. But other RFPs that we have, definitely you don't need any prior type of experience. I'm just saying what will be helpful. You want the RFPs for multifamily going to be really complex.
Any other questions for Mr. Johnson or Matt?
So does that help answer your question?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, super.
I would
And
definitely.
you can, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. And remember, Matt has put the links to the RFPs, so you can look at them now.
I would definitely employ members of this committee to, be a part of this particular RFP process if you have the time. I think it's important for all of us to gain experience in that process, so we come to these meetings with better understandings of how money is spent and who gets that money, so we can narrow out who those organizations are. So I employ members of this committee to, if have time, jump on this particular RFP. Matt, we're still with you on boards and commissions annual report requirement.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, Mr. Chair, if anyone has any questions that they'd like to, get more information about these RFPs offline, feel free to, email me or reach out to me, and I'd be glad to, provide some more detail and let you know a little bit more about sort of the process. So the boards and commissions annual report. So the clerk, is, I don't know that it's new. It's just something that the clerk is making sure that we are following. It's not something that we've done as long as I've been around. We've not done these, but there's an annual report that all the boards and commissions have to submit. And it's something that we need to do. I believe the 25th actually is it the 25th, or maybe it's next week? I can't remember. But this is something that we just became aware of and wanted to just make sure that that you all were aware that that's something that is expected. The clerk is expected that to be done. And I talked briefly with Mr. Johnson about this last week. And we will work with the committee to do this. And it's the expectation is just a summary of the activities and the work of the committee over the year. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that everyone is aware that that's something that is expected.
Thank you for that. Any public questions or comments? We had a couple of guests. I don't know if they're still on. Now we always encourage the members of the community to be a part of this group. This is your live, and you should where you live, and you should have a say so and be able to ask the questions that are pressing you. So if there are any public questions or comments, now is a good time to be able to be recognized. Do we have any?
And
I don't think that we do, per se.
we do have Miss Kimberly Davis. I'm not sure if she is. She has any comments, but I believe I just gave her the ability to speak if she wants to, but definitely doesn't have to.
Well, welcome, Ms. Davis. We appreciate you for being here. We do have some openings, so I would encourage you to, if interested, in apply to be on the Citizens Advisory Committee, as well as other members encouraging your neighbors that live in Durham, if they want to be a part of a board and get involved in local government. That I don't know how many vacancies we have. It's maybe one on the city side and maybe two on the county side. I don't know, but
that's correct.
We would love to have a full board, and we know that it's not, time restrictive. We meet once a month, and so we encourage anybody who wants to get involved in local government to come be a part of the oldest committee out of all of the committees in city of Durham. All right. Any other business do we have? Any other business?
Here.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask staff about the upcoming city budget process. I know that that's starting soon, and I just want to be sure that as a committee, we could provide any support needed, or if there are priorities that we want to convey, that we have space to do so. I know the process is going to start soon, I think next month, with you all presenting, I guess, your budgets to the council or to the manager. But where does it fit in for us to be able to have some sort of input before we get so far down the line where it's just a matter of us providing comments with the general public after it's developed?
I'm not sure if Mr. Johnson is able to speak to that. We are in the budget process, yes.
We're in the midst of the budget process now. Actually, the budget process started in December in terms of the manager and the deputy city manager becoming familiar with the things that we were thinking about, as they do with all 25 departments. We have to submit our budgets by the end of February. I think somebody might need to mute.
looking at ways in which, so the answer to your question is, we're waiting for the.
Matt, are you able to mute whoever's speaking?
We need to mute Ms. Davis.
They're supposed to just get.
And
We're good.
I think I might have muted everyone. Hold on a second. My apologies.
So I would say that our budgets are due by the end of February, and our budget preparation is underway. Most of the budget is administrative in terms of what we'll be submitting. The time to comment, I suspect that I'll have to make a presentation during one of the 2 city council budget retreats, and at that time, that's when we'll be sharing some of our thoughts about what we're doing in terms of the next year. Other than that, I'll be probably working up until that time. We'll be working on it up until that time.
Thank you for that. And then just one other question, budget related. I know that you all, meaning the city, has been going through this process of deciding priorities related to the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. How does that factor into kind of budget preparations this year, or is that going to be completely kind of separate or outside of what you all are preparing for the manager and for council ultimately?
So for community development, it's totally outside. The funding that we have and that we receive for due to COVID and American Rescue is already underway and been administered, with the exception of the home ARP funding, and that's going to be under a different process and a longer process. But the general money that the city has received, that's actually under Deputy City Manager Bertha Johnson and the committee, and so she's probably a better person to talk to about that. I'm not really involved in it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes, for always bringing that stuff to light. I think that's important.
Mr. Chair, I thought I saw a hand, but it went away and I can't see it.
Yeah, it was mine. Councilman Williams here. Donald, I actually just asked that question in regards to this budget process. It is going to be completely separate from all departments, simply because the ARPA money, the rescue plan money, is a one-time contribution to the city. And we set ourselves up for failure if we put it into, like an annual recurring expectation. So that's why we wanted to make sure we spent this money wisely, and so it can have the most significant impact, which is also why we postponed the approval of the proposals that we received. We felt that there were some strong proposals, but the scoring process did not show everything that we. 1 second. Okay, sounds good. Sorry, guys, I'm now at work. So basically, to finish answering your question, we're going to take a deep dive into those proposals so that we can make sure it has the most communal and most broad impact. But we have this year and next year up to 2026 to spend that money, but it'll be separate from the annual recurring requests from the actual daily budget, annual budget.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams, for that. Ms. Alicia.
Mr. Chair, we had in the last minutes that we were going to do a follow-up on Community Development Week. I didn't know if you wanted to make an announcement about that or say anything here.
I'll leave that baton in your hands. Community Development Week is coming up. I don't know, Ebony, were you not spearheading that a little bit? I think I might have passed it.
Yeah, I think you passed the torch way back. And I don't have an update on that, but for folks, I think there are a couple other folks who are on that with me, so we can kind of come together and put together a quick plan.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I will definitely get up with you and try to formulate a concrete date that we all can meet those who are interested. I see McDonald wants to be a part of that as well, to try to make that week something special, hopefully in person, as well as some virtual events during that time period.
Chairman Barnes, I had also volunteered. This is Dr. Hyman.
Dr. Hyman, absolutely. Those of you who volunteered are still on. We still need you. So, please make sure you get in contact with Ebony again, so that way we can formalize a date and finalize a date to be able to get together to talk about it.
When is the week again? When is the week again coming up?
It's in April. It's
Okay.
usually, I believe, the second week in April. I can get the exact dates for you. It's in April though.
And we can shoot that out via email. What those dates are and how best to get in contact with Ebony. If Ebony's going to put her email in the chat, and she can do it that way, and you can just reach out to Ebony in that aspect. Is there any other business?
No, we're ready to get off this call, but I just want to throw this out to staff with Community Development Week coming up. I do think if it's safe, being able to visit or set up some type of tour of projects that have been completed might be a way to energize folks. So I'll just throw that out there for staff to think about if there's a safe way for us to be able to do that as a team and a community.
I would say we will consider that and we'll monitor the situation. We've done that in the past. We've gone on bus tours and we've made arrangements to visit different projects. And so what we'll do is just monitor the situation, see if we can do anything like that safely.
Thank you again, Mr. Hughes, for bringing that up. I think it's important for our presence to be felt, that people can see us out there in the community and support any of these organizations in the best way we can, as long as we can do that safely. So I will have Mr. Johnson lead that charge there. Any other announcements? I see that we have our next meeting will be on February the 28th. And so go ahead, Matt.
Well, and Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make sure that committee knows that we have each year that it's required that we have needs public hearing, and that's related to the federal funding that we talked about in this meeting. And so the first needs public hearing is scheduled for Monday, February 21st, City Council meeting. And so if anyone is, interested in providing public comment, that would be the meeting. And feel free, please help spread the word on that as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Any other announcements? I'm sure that I'll have some major announcements come next month. That I'll inform the committee on next month. However, go ahead, Mr. Williams, council member.
Be on the lookout. You're going to start seeing and hearing language on us shifting the city back or forward, rather, to some sense of normality. We're going to have to, get the city back awake, and as we start to live around COVID. So just because we're meeting February 28th next time, just know that don't be surprised if you see council start to resume in-person meetings in the near future. As well, in regards to being, if you're vaccinated, you're boosted, all of that good stuff, you're in good shape. But we're going to start looking at the numbers of hospitalizations of vaccinated people, and that's going to be the data point we're going to start looking at. So just be on the lookout for that. It is definitely going to impact the future meetings and activities. And I was just listening to what Donna was talking about. I think that we'll be in good shape to do some pretty impactful stuff.
And
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, one other point, if I could, it's not on the agenda, but we're planning to have a presentation from NC DataWorks and Mr. John Colleen. And so that I believe is going to be on the agenda for the February meeting.
That is, I would encourage members to attend affordable housing implementation, the Affordable Housing Bond Implementation Committee meeting. They're so informative, so much information on seeing how that bond is being put to use, what the updates are on those projects that Mr. Scott has presented to this board in the past. So we just saw that presentation from NC Works, and the reason why they're going to be coming is because I felt that this body really needed to hear that presentation. So look forward to that in February as well. Is there any other announcements? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn, and I will see you all on February the 28th, 2022.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you, Dr. Langloss. I'll see y'all in February. Be safe.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Take care, everybody.
Matt, can you stay on, Matt?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.